Back in 2018, the state of Missouri said, all right, if you want to get married with parental consent, you got to be 16. It was 15. They bumped it up to 16. But now there's a push here late in the legislative session to bump that up to 18, which is, of course, when you are considered a legal adult in the state of Missouri. Holly Rehder, a state senator who also is running for lieutenant governor, is joining us on KCMO. She is an advocate of advancing this legislation. It has gotten through the Senate, but it appears to possibly be stuck in the House down there in Jeff City. So, Holly, good morning. Let's take us through, if we could, your perspective on why you're such an advocate for this bill in moving the age to 18. And it comes, as I've read from your history, of someone who was married at the age of 15. So what is that backstory for those who don't know, and why is this something that is so important to you?
Hey, yes, good morning. Okay, so I grew up very different than what you find in elected officials typically. And so my mother struggled with mental illness. She was married 5 times. My daddy wasn't around, and we moved over 30 times from the end of my 3rd grade to the beginning of my 10th when I had to quit school to help take care of her and my little sister. So my life was a bit different. I've lived from California to Florida and many places in between, Texas multiple times. Experiencing horrific domestic violence and my mother not being able to get out of it, I couldn't handle it anymore. And I talked her into signing the papers for me as soon as I turned 15, for me to be able to marry my 21-year-old boyfriend. And I did. And that was, to me, that was my path out of a horrific home life that I couldn't manage anymore. But at the time, we had also just experienced a car crash where I had to quit school then and take care of her. So at 15, I was a high school dropout, married, pregnant 4 months later, and I really had to look at my life and see that I was about to give my child the same life I was fighting to get out of. All these years later, I can absolutely see it was a struggle, of course, raising a child on my own and trying to figure all of that out. And I got my GED. I'm dyslexic, so it took me a few years of taking the classes at night on the weekends because I did work full time and I did jobs. I was 15. I couldn't go get a job. I had to do things like a nanny, hotel maid. Those are the type of jobs that I had. But with all that being said, I knew then, but I didn't. But within years of making that decision, it was even more apparent to me that wasn't the best path, and it wasn't the logical path. But I was dealing with a 15-year-old brain when we all know that our frontal cortex doesn't develop until your early 20s. And so the decision that I was making for myself, or that my parents signed the paperwork and made for me, was one that has a very low success rate. Right now, it's mainly girls that get married underage, and our girls that get married underage, the divorce rate is about 80%.
Is that nationwide, or is that state of Missouri?
That's nationwide.
Wow. Okay, so you want to get this up to 18. When you look at it right now, we've talked about it this morning. Some people have texted in saying, hey, what if 2 individuals who are under 18, the woman gets pregnant and they want to get married before they have this child? What would you say to them in terms of why this piece of legislation should still move forward in a situation like that?
When you look at the data and when you look at the statistics of the rate of poverty that you stay in, the rate of multiple babies being born and being on the state system when they get married versus waiting until you're an adult and making that decision, because getting into a bad marriage, that only compounds the problem of, hey, I'm a teenager with a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you just looking at the data, taking the emotion out of it, looking at the data is very clear in showing that this is a decision that needs to be made as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And, marriage is a lifetime commitment. And so I think that having a parent sign their child into a lifetime commitment is just wrong on many levels. That this is a decision that needs to be made by two adults. And, having a baby doesn't change that. I had a baby at 16. I still can see where had I stayed in school, had I had done that route, my obstacles would have been a lot less.
Mm-hmm.
But even not taking my own personal example, just looking at the data itself, it's a very clear picture of how it really hamstrings our girls.
Mm-hmm. Holly Rehder is here, Missouri State Senator. She is running for lieutenant governor as well. So this thing has passed the Senate, upping the age of marriage to 18 in the state of Missouri. The hang-up is in the House right now, it seems. There are some Republicans who are against this. What's going on there? I know it's not the body that you're in, but what's going on there, and how confident are you that something can ultimately get done on this week?
I think that we have the votes in the House. We have not been able to get it out of committee, and it's just that the committee it was sent to, I think this is a generational thought process. We all know folks that, our great-grandmothers that got married at 15, right?
Mm-hmm.
And was married for 50 years or 70 years until they passed away. But women didn't have the opportunity that they have now. Women worked, inside the home. They didn't work outside the home. They didn't go to college. They didn't, our lives are very different now. Women strive for professional lives. They want to be educated. And some do want to stay home and work in the home. And that is absolutely wonderful and honorable. But our times are not what they were then. The opportunity that women have now just makes this not successful. When you look at almost 80% of divorces, but I think it's the generational thought process. You have none of the women have come and said, "Hey, I'm against this." It's older men that are saying, my great aunt got married at 15 and they had a wonderful life, or my mother, and it's like, I get that, I do, but that is not the reality that we are in today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's certainly not. Well, we'll see. Hopefully this thing will ultimately get done and get across the finish line. Where does Missouri rank right now? I mean, Missouri allows 16-year-olds to get married with parental consent. How unique is that compared to the other 49 states?
It's right in the middle. It's right in the middle. We have about 12, maybe 13 states that have passed it to where, just once you're an adult, you can make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
We have some states that are like us and a couple of states, not many, that are like we were back 2018 and before.
Okay, where it's 15. All right. Well, Holly, thank you so much for the time. I know it's a very busy time and week down there in Jeff City, so hopefully you guys will get a lot of good stuff done, including this.
Hey, if I can say to your listening audience, y'all call your representative if you care about this, because it would help.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a great point. So call up your state rep and tell them to get this thing done. Holly, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
You as well. That is Holly Rehder, State Senator in Missouri on KCMO.